Gracias. Gracias. Bienvenidos a Inmigrantes y aliados, hablando sobre las elecciones 2020. En el programa de hoy vamos a hablar sobre su voto y la importancia de su voto. Pero antes de todo, hablemos un poquito de la historia del voto en los Estados Unidos. Antes, en los Estados Unidos, para poder tener el derecho de votar, tenía que ser terrateniente o dueño de mucho terreno. Especialmente eso era para hombres blancos y adinerados. Durante la historia, muchos otros grupos han tenido que luchar para tener el derecho al voto. Esa es la historia de las mujeres, esa es la historia de la comunidad negra, esa es la historia de la comunidad inmigrante que ha venido aquí a los Estados Unidos. Siempre tener que luchar por su derecho, incluido el derecho al voto. Y la opresión para que la gente no vaya a votar siempre ha sido una táctica para que el grupo más adinerado y los más millonarios en los Estados Unidos puedan tener el poder de controlar el sistema político y tomar sus decisiones que les favorezcan a ellos y no a nosotros. En los últimos días lo hemos visto. El presidente Trump ha estado utilizando esta táctica de opresión para que las personas no salgan a votar de una manera que ha tenido mucho impacto en nuestras comunidades. Y mucha gente en nuestra comunidad hasta se lo cree y no han participado y no han ido a votar. Y si no lo cree, miremos este video.
Millions and millions of mail-in ballots because they can be forged, they can be captured, they can be taken.
Yet President Trump and the First Lady have requested mail-in ballots to vote in next Tuesday's primary election in Florida. Democrats, too, are claiming fraud after the president appointed a major donor to the Trump Victory Fund, Louis DeJoy, as Postmaster General. They claim he immediately put in cost-cutting measures to delay mail delivery.
He seems to have been put in to destroy the post office and certainly make it much harder to conduct a fair election.
Como pueden ver, el presidente Donald Trump continúa utilizando la táctica de opresión al voto para mantenerse en poder. Y eso es algo que está utilizando y lo va a continuar utilizando para tratar de ganar otros 4 años más. Sabemos que la comunidad inmigrante también generalmente vota por el Partido Demócrata, lo cual, por eso, si podemos mirar, el Partido Republicano generalmente está siempre en favor de pasar leyes y utilizar esta táctica de opresión para mantenerse en poder. Hoy vamos a descubrir unos mitos que son utilizados en ocasiones para oprimir y para hacerle creer que usted y su voto no son importantes. Así es que, antes de todo, vamos a hablar sobre mitos y la importancia de su voto.
Hi, in this episode we'll be discussing civic engagement and the voting process and some of the misconceptions that surround that and why some people may feel discouraged to vote because of those misconceptions. I'm Iliana.
And I'm Jose Palma.
I'm Roxana Martinez.
And I'm Jared Wright.
And today I think we're going to start with the misconception that it's easy to vote or to begin the process of voting, and I think Roxana can help us with that.
Yeah, sure. So for the first myth that we're going to bust today, there's this misconception, or true, depending on how you see it, myth that it's easy to vote. I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of a complicated answer, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the way I see it, voting itself, the process of it is easy. It's, you go to your voting office, you fill out a ballot, you sign your name, and that should be it for the most part. However, as we all know, it's not as simple as just doing that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing with this election, especially how government officials are making it more difficult to complicate the voting process when it should be very easy. Mm-hmm. Just looking at what's happening currently with the USPS situation.
Just terrifying.
Which is horrifying, yes, because, especially we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are scared to go out and vote physically, so they're relying on mail-in ballots to do the work for them. However, because of Trump's decision to, refuse to fund the USPS office, budgeting and laying off workers, and mail as a result gets delayed and may not go into these respective offices in the time that they need to be, handed in order to be counted.
I remember you had told me before, I don't remember where I can find this information, we'll find it somewhere, that 60% of Democrats are planning to vote by mail.
Yes. Which is a huge chunk.
Hello.
Yeah, it's
which
a
is
lot of
that's a lot of
people,
people.
right.
It is a terrifying amount of people when you think about the context of the USPS situation and the defunding of it.
So imagine if just like a small number of that 60% end up not getting the ballots in time
exactly.
because
Exactly.
the USPS is defunded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a scary scenario for election night because, again, I believe it was from The Atlantic where I received that stat, but we can double check anyways, where about 60% of people who anticipate voting for Biden will be doing so through the mail versus the 20 to 40% who will be voting for Trump via mail-in ballot. And who knows, I'm very scared for what November 3rd is going to look like. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
But, aside from problems with the USPS, there's also just outright tactics that are enforced by government officials, for example, in Georgia, Texas, and Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, where government officials have, taken down polling places, or they have made it so that the polling places are so far apart that for people who don't have cars, who maybe rely on public transportation, things like that, to get to their polling places, it's pretty hard to go out and vote and maybe stand in line for 5 hours for a polling place that's already hours away. And this directly impacts, really, communities of color who, we've seen reports, I believe it was in Georgia, I could be mistaken, where people had to wait about 5 or 6 hours in line just to vote for their prospective candidate. And again, in Georgia, with the Stacey Abrams versus, at the time, Secretary, but current Governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, where prior to the election night, there were already reports of him planning to slash early voting, purging voter rolls, as well as closing polling places, citing budgetary needs and that kind of thing. And this is, he can say as much as he wants that this is an act of saving money, doing this for, convenience and stuff like that. But we know that in
It's a tactic.
It's a tactic, yeah.
And the whole thing about voting is easy. Just imagine, you speak English. You was born here. Just imagine if you come from some minority groups where people speak English, for a normal life. But then this type of information, most of the time, is shared just in English. And sometimes in some specific news outlet, it doesn't get to our community as it should, to make it easy and to make sure everyone can participate during the elections.
Right. And there's like a long history of that in the United States, right? Of people trying to suppress the votes, especially of minority communities, right?
Right.
So they used to have like tests that you needed to take before you could vote, right? And that was deliberately designed to make it so that people who are black or brown were not voting.
Right.
And now, like with these new tactics, right? This is like the new way of trying to suppress votes. And Trump like literally said the USPS thing is so that there cannot be universal mail-in voting.
Yeah. You had mentioned too before this conversation that I haven't heard these words, but that's because I guess my ears are blessed. I haven't heard him invite people to come and guard polls, but you have.
Right.
And so please tell me about that.
Right. So at a rally in, I think it was North Carolina, might have been South Carolina. I think it was North Carolina.
North Carolina.
One of the
North
Carolinas.
Carolina, yeah. He literally at the rally, he told his supporters to go and guard the polls, right? And he wanted them to like make sure. He said that they're stealing and thieving and doing things like that, which like it's terrifying, right? So that's like reminiscent of like what the Klan did,
Yes.
to suppress black people's votes. And it's really it's a scary idea that he's now perpetuating. He's like sending it out everywhere.
And I'm sure Trump himself can imagine that by inviting people to guard polling stations, there would be violence incited. And that sounds like what he wants, which is, again, terrifying. But everything this man says and does is terrifying. I am just scared of this man. But he does this. He is trying to suppress votes. Why? Because they matter. Because they count. Which I think you can talk to us about.
Yeah, so my myth is that my vote doesn't count. But clearly, like as Roxana was pointing out, like the reason they're trying to suppress votes is because your vote counts. So I just want to hit on a few points about that they're really important, right? In 2016, Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote. And so this kind of gets onto, in this myth, the complexity of what it means to have your vote count, right? Because it does count, but actually some people's votes in the United States end up counting more than others, sadly, right? Hillary won the popular vote by 2.8 million people.
Which is so much.
Right? Yes, we liked her better. Yeah, we liked her better. But then she still lost because she lost states like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, right? And she ended up winning in places like New Hampshire, right? But those are all swing states. And the swing states actually, because of the Electoral College and the way we decide things in the United States, which is a little bit messed up, they have more sway over our elections. And so she ended up losing, for instance, in Michigan by only 10,000 votes, right?
That's less than like people who go to UMass Amherst.
Right.
UMass Amherst has more people than that margin, so that's crazy.
So it's like one college just like showing up to vote.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, like everybody at UMass Amherst would have voted for Hillary too, right? So that one group of people could have decided the entire election. And the problem with it is that so many people are told that my vote isn't that important. Like it doesn't matter. And so then they don't show up. And so we had like such a suppressed voter turnout for 2016 that it ended up really affecting the outcome. Now, toward that, if something like Pennsylvania or someplace like Michigan, all of those electorates from the Electoral College go to one person. So let's say it's 500,000 people to 500,001, right? 500,000 Hillary, 500,001 Trump. Trump would have taken that entire state. So all of those delegates would have gone to Trump, which is how Hillary can still win the popular vote and yet lose the election.
That stresses me out.
Yeah. No, and there is something to pay attention about. Many people say your vote doesn't count, but then just think about it. So why big corporation invest millions of dollars to elect a specific candidate? Because it does matter. Candidate and elected officials, we do different things depending on who is supporting them. So therefore, the vote really matters.
Yeah. And then, Roxana, you were saying something previously about all of those like Bernie supporters who were...
Oh, God.
And you know, I love Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
as much as the next person. I wish he was like my uncle or something.
Yeah, my sweet grandpa.
My sweet grandpa.
Tio Bernie.
my Tio Bernie. But, you know, you need to vote, and you also, it's between Trump and Biden. There is no third party. There is no throwing away our vote, especially for this election.
Yeah.
You know, in 2016, there was, you know, sort of the Bernie or bust movement, which really, unfortunately, ended up sacrificing a lot of votes that could have gone to Hillary Clinton in a couple of states. We can't afford to make that mistake twice.
Yeah.
There is no third party, there is no third option, there is no, I'm not voting for either of them. There is only your vote for either Biden, or really only Biden in this case. I'm not gonna act like Trump's even an option.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's
selfish is the word I'm gonna use.
but I also think it's accurate. I think it is selfish to put our feelings before the betterment of the entire country, because while I understand that it might be hard to vote for Biden for some people, or for most people, frankly, I think it's obvious that one side of this coin is more dangerous than the other. And so it's, to me and to us, it simply does not make sense to sit back and let that side of the coin tip the whole coin the hell over. It just don't make sense to me, but okay.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, the line is very clear. You have a president who's saying that everyone who's coming from other countries, especially for for people of color, are criminals. Even though we saw during the fire in California and Oregon, Mexican firefighters coming to help. But those you don't see them in the news. You see other things. The other thing too, if there are people who are believing that electing Biden is not the option, just think about what has happened during these 4 years and whether you can afford it other 4 years. And when people think that it doesn't impact them, that's not true, actually. Yeah, that's not true, because when the economy is close to failing, that will impact you. When you see your neighbor getting deported or targeted with racism and everything, that impacts you too, even though you may believe that it's not. But when your kid go back to school and don't see his neighbor, I am sure your son or your daughter will come asking you, what's going on? I didn't see my best friend at school today. At least that's what I have heard from talking from my kids, their experiences at the school. Sometimes they come and ask me, what's going on? My best friend father was deported, and so this election is pretty. The line is clear. Right. There is no way to go around. People will say, I have to swallow and vote for Biden. Well, there is no option. What are the options?
Right.
There is no way to justify why you need to go with the president that we have right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Which probably gets us to how it is that people suppress our votes, right? Which one of the things that they use is they talk about fraud all the time.
Yeah, which is another myth. So there is another myth that people are committing fraud to support a specific candidate. I don't know about you, but I find that very difficult to believe. And actually, there are not that many, articles that talk about it because there is nothing to prove. Yeah,
there's like no evidence. Yeah,
Could you give a hypothetical example of what fraud might even look like?
I mean, what Trump was saying in a rally is that people are committing fraud by going to the polling place and voting for somebody who's already dead. Or he was actually saying that sometimes people go and vote and then just walk around in circles, or sometimes go to the parking lot, change their clothes, and go back to vote. I don't know under whose name, but that's what he was saying just in a rally. But then even during this has been a conversation for a long time, and there have been a few studies. There is an article, a Vox article, that talk about that. Actually, you can see this chart right now that the number of people voting is so high. I'm sure you can read it, but is 834 million. Let's say it again. 834,065,926 votes. Within all those, there were only 35 credible allegation of voting fraud. Just 35. Just 35. You can see it in the chart.
Yeah, no, actually, you can't see it in the chart because it's so small. Right?
Exactly. You will see the number of voters, and then you will see very small, invisible number of credible, because not even specific cases, just credible.
Right.
And then, after the 2016 election, because of all the comments that President Trump was doing, there was also another study by the Brennan Center. And what they find out is that actually during the 2016 election, there were only about 30 incidents of suspected, not even confirmed cases or proven. Only 30 within 23.5 million votes.
Abysmal. Just teeny
tiny.
Yeah.
There's no space.
There's no space right there.
So, another example is that after he lost New Hampshire, and he was saying that people, especially out-of-state students, were jumping in the bus and going to New Hampshire and vote. The funny part about that is the Secretary of State, Bill Gardner, by that time, actually was part of the voter fraud investigation team for the Trump candidacy during that time, and they couldn't find any case or a specific case to justify what President Trump has been talking about. They were zero.
When did he ever need evidence, though, right?
He will come up with theories, and whatever he's dreaming about, he will say is true.
Right. Yeah, Trump citing a source?
Oh my God!
Unheard of. So the four of us can agree that Trump is a corrupt human being, and I think something else that people might tell themselves encouraging themselves not to vote is that everybody is corrupt in politics. And you know what? Understandable. I can understand why you might think such a thing. A politician chooses to choose that path. A politician chooses to become part of a system that oppresses so many people. However, politicians are also people. And there are people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who has
my queen.
has chosen the path of politics because she wants to protect all people. She has an upbringing that's very similar to mine. She's from a Puerto Rican family in the Bronx, from a low-income family. And so she has a very close and very deep connection and desire to help people. And it's interesting to me that she, in the position that she's in, has been just berated by the men surrounding her, like Ted Yoho, who with his whole chest just, just used really strong language against her. She dragged him so eloquently. Love her to death. If we can, we'll insert a clip right here because I think it is just beautiful the way that she articulates her feelings about this.
What I am here to say is that this harm that Mr. Yoho tried to levy against me was not just an incident directed at me. But when you do that to any woman, what Mr. Yoho did was give permission to other men to do that to his daughters. In using that language in front of the press, he gave permission to use that language against his wife, his daughters, women in his community. And I am here to stand up to say that is not acceptable. I do not care what your views are. It does not matter how much I disagree or how much it incenses me or how much I feel that people are dehumanizing others. I will not do that myself. I will not allow people to change and create hatred in our hearts.
And I really appreciate, too, that AOC doesn't just talk about her feelings about it, but rather the dangerous ways that Ted Yoho spoke to her encourages other people, other politicians and just citizens of the United States to speak that way to other people and to treat other people, particularly women, in such a way that dehumanizes them and just normalizes the abuse towards women.
And just to add to that, I feel like one of the things that she's really trying to do is she's trying to represent her constituency,
yes,
right? Which I think is like the honesty in a politician, right? The honesty in a politician is when they are actually representing their people.
Yes.
You know? And I think what ends up happening for a lot of people is their proximity to money ends up then compromising their ability to actually serve the people for whom they're supposed to serve. And so instead they respond to money and not the people. But you can see with Ocasio-Cortez that she is responding to the people. And so like we need more of those representatives. But the way we get those representatives is if we show up to vote, you know? And so that people can't just pay for votes, but that like we decide.
You know who else has been quite honest? I'm sorry. But I thought about it and I have to say it. Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney don't even like Trump. Like, hello?
Yeah.
I remember when we were in fear that he might be elected, that some of my friends cried about it. They were so stressed.
She's talking about me.
And so it's amazing to me that we could have been so fearful of Mitt Romney. And now fast forward, we are in the middle of a presidency that is so much worse than what we even imagined could have happened with Mitt Romney.
Yes.
And
even Mitt Romney, with all his money, thinks that Donald Trump is corrupt.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's terrible. Yeah, there are many reasons why many of our people believe that, the electoral process of politicians are corrupt. And some of us come from countries that there is a lot of corruption, way more than, or at least in the United States, they do it in a different way, let's put it that way. They are corrupt, but they do it in a different way. But in reality, every elected official, his or her first goal is to keep their job. And the people who, let's say, hire them and provide their job are those people that go out to vote. Therefore, elected officials will respond to the people that go out to vote. And usually our community sometimes, for different reasons, sometimes people have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and they prefer to go to work instead of taking those hours and going to vote. Because they usually say that everyone is corrupt and my vote doesn't count. But in reality, you are falling in a tactic that especially the Republican Party wants for you to believe.
Right.
I think with that, I hope you've gained a lot from this conversation. We are informed, and I want you to stay safe, stay healthy, and stay informed. Thank you for watching.
The wrap-up. This is our show in 2 minutes. Our show is Informed. Immigrants and Allies talk the 2020 election. This week's show is on your vote and civic engagement, or why your vote counts. Really, a democracy, our democracy, is defined by our ability to vote, to make our voices heard, and to make them impact real policies or representatives. And the truth is, Trump is afraid of you and your vote. That's why Trump is trying to suppress votes, by undermining mail-in voting, limiting voter locations, or encouraging his supporters to guard the polls. Guard the polls from what? Bad penmanship? Perhaps rogue bubble filling? Trump will claim he's trying to defend the polls against fraud, but in a 15-year study from 2000 to 2014, there were only 34 cases of suspected voter fraud out of more than 800 million votes. So his worries about fraud are as realistic and reasonable as my aunt worrying about another alien abduction. No, he wants to guard the polls from people exercising their hard-earned right to vote, specifically people of color. That means that Trump isn't representing everyone in this country, especially not immigrants. And he should. He must. He is only responding to his own interests and the interests of his friends. That is the epitome of corruption. Special interests over the will of the people. Some may say all of our government officials are corrupt, but many are actually representing the will of the people. Representatives like AOC. That's why we need to show up to vote for elected officials that have integrity, not ones that dodge taxes for decades or lie and manipulate to get what they want. Trump will ensure that voting isn't as easy as it should be. This means you need to make a plan to vote this year. Register, and register now. Like, right now. Then, find your polling place, and make sure you give yourself enough time to vote, even if there might be lines. Bring your Wii, or play tiddlywinks with fellow voters while you wait. But make sure you vote. And tell others about your vote. Tell the world. Fling open your door and yell it from the mountaintops. So, stay safe, stay healthy, stay informed, and vote. See you next time.
Estamos llegando al final del programa. Espero que usted haya aprendido la importancia de su voto y que comience a hacer los planes de cómo va a ir a votar en noviembre 3. Y si tiene duda si va a ir a votar o no, piense en las comunidades que están sufriendo debido a la administración del presidente Trump. Yo no puedo votar, pero confío que usted va a ir a votar por mí y nuestra comunidad. Manténgase saludable, seguro e informado. Nos vemos en el próximo episodio.